Hey, what's going on, everyone? Check out what's coming up this week on Legacies. I'm going to trigger you with one word, METRC.
Kill me.
But we just kept going because we kept getting emails from people saying, you know, this stuff that we've tried is amazing and we need more of it.
The majority of customers that come to your store are, in at least the US, are one-time customers.
Wow.
There's just a real problem with getting people to come back. Yep.
That's crazy. Well, welcome to Legacies, everyone. I'm your host, Tom Ritchie, joined by Wesley the Wizard Bowles, co-host, executive producer. How you doing, Wes?
Good morning. I feel like we're going to talk about the weather again, given the fucking weekend we had.
Fuck the weather. Fuck the weather. Well, I mean, you didn't get enough snow. You had to fuck off to Blue Mountain. There just wasn't enough snow here for you?
Yeah, it's an annual trip. Me and our friend group does. So, yeah, it was really good.
Did you ski? Did you snowboard?
No, I'm too top heavy for skiing and snowboarding. Not for me.
Don't use that. Don't use that as an excuse. Come on, break something.
I did. I tried it once. I went once in high school. I went to Glen Eden, and I came down way too fast. My front of the board caught the snow, and I did about 5 front flips.
Yeah,
ended over my head, and I was like, no, that's not for me.
I usually get, when I do, I haven't been in a couple of years, but I'll get a couple of decent runs in, and then I don't know, all shit just goes south, and you start catching your lip and breaking fucking wrists, and it's not fun. I typically just shimmy over to the side, and I'll smoke a joint and drink some Fireball.
Yeah,
just watch everyone else go by me.
That's really what this trip was. It's get a cab, and we ate edibles for like 3 days, and that was pretty much it. Yeah.
Anything new and interesting?
I hadn't tried them before, but I tried the 1964's live rosin gummies.
Oh, okay.
Those are delicious. And they punch really well.
I find live rosin is so much better. We had friends over Saturday night, so we went out for dinner, came back. No one really wanted to drink. Great, that's good for me. And I had a bunch of sheesh sodas sitting in my fridge that they got to try for the first time. They're like, "Oh my god, this is delicious." I go, "You won't want to try any other ones, really?" Yeah. I said, they're like, "Oh, it's only 10 milligrams." I'm like, but it'll hit you much different. Trust me. And then within half an hour, it was like, yeah, they do hit different. That's for sure. It's the difference between, disti and live resin or hash rosins, and it's completely.
Well, here you go. Just add this Aspire shot right here, and make
you can always do that. You can, but we weren't even getting into mocktails. Everyone was lazy.
You do anything for Valentine's Day?
Nope. We went the next day out for dinner. The schedules don't align all the time, so that's a day created to make us spend money, Wes.
Yeah.
Every day is Valentine's Day when you're in love. Isn't that what we're supposed to say? Okay, now that you cut, we'll say the real truth behind the scenes here. What was the snow like in Blue Mountain though? They don't normally get hit quite as hard.
They got hit hard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they got hit hard. Yeah, we luckily the guy who owned the Airbnb kind of lived on the property, so he was out. I think he snow blew clearing like 3 or 4 times while we were up there. It was.
Yeah, I gave mine a workout. As you know, I've got like the lot here, and which is fucked. So listen to this. So I'm like, I haven't changed the oil in the snowblower this year. Normally, Ash and I will, get all the maintenance done and everything. I'm like, fuck. So it got a workout. Let's just say it got a workout, 4 or 5 times within, a 48-hour span. And I mean deep snow, right? And it's throwing it a long ways. Anyways, so it smells hot. And I'm like, that's weird. Next morning, I go into my garage and I'm like, what is that smell? I'm like, is it because I just changed the oil? And I'm like, okay, maybe it was the old oil burnt. Did I forget to cap the container? And I'm looking around.
Thing or whatever. Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck is that smell? I'm like, it almost smells like electrical. Next day, I go out and my heater's not working in my garage. I know, first world problems, right? But anyways, I'm like, what the fuck? That's weird. Check the breaker isn't gone. I'm like, okay, something's really strange. So I stripped the bottom off the heater. I almost had a fucking electrical fire. My heater in my garage had been working so hard so much. One, I think the wiring was undersized for the unit. But anyways, yeah, just completely melted the fucking block, the wire back about 3 inches. I'm like, whoa, so it was electrical. My senses were right.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, so anyways, last night, break out fucking some new armor cables, some heavy duty stuff and run to it. Thank God the heater isn't fucked because, I don't feel like dropping $500-$600 on a new fucking heater.
No.
I'd love to go natural gas. That'd be the way to go.
Yeah.
And I know everyone's like, oh, he's got to hit the garage. Listen, there's a lot of shit stored that can't freeze. I have no room in this house for that stuff. So
heated driveways sounding better and better.
Ooh, baby. Now you're talking my language. Yeah. When, what is that saying? You won't know I won the lottery, but there will be signs. Yeah. Heated
I'm not
driveway,
saying they're cheap, but
sign.
they're not as expensive as they used to be. They used to be a super luxury, but the way you can implement them now, they're not outrageous, especially if you live in our area.
If you're pouring one, I do not know why you wouldn't put it in if you live in snow-laden country. Like that's what, and heated floors as well, because I'm a big fan of radiant heat. I don't have it. I fucking hate HVAC. I hate HVAC. Pollutants getting blown around and fucking dry air. I hate it. I'm not a big fan of the winter, man. Not anymore. And then I'm talking to people in the West Coast, and they're like, oh, the winter season's kind of done here. And it's, 12 degrees, 13. I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I had a chance to connect with Sam from uFeelu yesterday, Sam and Alex. They're so great, man. We've been trying to connect for the longest time. And finally there was a message somewhere and I'm like, let's just chat. So anyways, we're talking about obviously the challenges in the wellness categories in the industry and, the departure from medical, but the hopeful return to medical. And we got into some minor cannabinoids. uFeelu puts out, I think it's a CBC focused product. It might be a transdermal or no, it's a gel cap. But regardless of that, it got me to thinking about the minor cannabinoids. And let me ask you, I'll just ask you this. What do you know about minor cannabinoids?
Very little, other than they probably play a much larger role than we already know. That's my extent of my knowledge.
And ignorantly, I'm the exact same. And we are individuals that have been in this industry a long time. We've heard the talk and the chatter about them. We've heard about the entourage effect. We understand this, but we've never really dug into it that much. And I think, through, which is coincidentally, they're, connected with a lot of different PhDs and doctors on LinkedIn that are in the cannabis industry. And, they talk about it. So I pay a lot more attention to the posts. But, dude, I just went through and my good old buddy ChatGPT asked it just to outline a bunch of the minor cannabinoids. There's a lot, and we don't pay attention to them. Like CBG, we've heard them, right? So CBG is called the mother cannabinoid, anti-inflammatory. CBN, we've heard it, but we don't really pay attention. I'm not even going to try. So this one's cannabinol. That's the sleepy cannabinoid. It's sedative. CBC. This is one that we were talking with uFeelu. This one is an anti-inflammatory. Now, it makes me wonder. Like, are we allowed to say that even? Like you can't claim now it has anti-inflammatory properties. I'm sure if you're a doctor, you can talk about it. But anyways, yeah, and then you get into like THCV and CBDV and THCA, which we know is becoming quite the thing in the US, right, with the hemp. CBDA, Delta 8. Delta 8 is actually quite interesting. This is one of the milder, what they call the milder THC, less potent, but it's a clear-headed high. It's also, I think it's attached somehow in the hexo format. I don't know when you have an edible, but anyways, I just think that we could put a lot more effort, not you and I necessarily. Well, yes, you and I, because we consume, but a lot of the effects that we have are due to that entourage effect, right? So when we, consume a certain strain or cultivar, we're getting to the point where we attach that to the brand. And I think there's a departure from the old school thinking of this is high in certain terpenes or certain, it's got the majors and minors, but there's certain cannabinoid profiles in there that will give you those different effects, right? Whether making you sleepy, away from the sativa and the indica and the hybrid, when we understand what's truly responsible is the makeup of that plant and the cannabinoids within each of those, right? Because I don't even compare the indicas and sativas and hybrids anymore. I don't. But the underlying understanding the minor cannabinoids that are within that, that's what you're getting your different effects from, whether you're sleepy or clear-headed or high or whatever's going on. And I think we just dismiss it. And obviously a lot more research could be done, but which then leads to bud tender education, which leads to, people finding the proper products, which is fitting for this episode. We've got Dina Rollman coming on, StrainBrain power plant, obviously AI, right in your world. You're going to love this one. And then we get into sustainability with Blunt Botanicals. We've got Sarah and Jill joining us. So it's going to be interesting. Both very, very important topics right now. I mean, sustainability we've talked about for the longest time. In most cases, I think we just look at it as packaging, but there's so much more beyond that. Anyways, I'm going to trigger you with one word, metric.
Kill me.
So for those that aren't aware, when Wes and I...
Well, actually, before you go too far into it, maybe I'm remembering wrong. Was it metric that's the trigger word, or was it biotrack?
Both.
It's both. Okay.
It's both. But metric, listen, we haven't been involved. We haven't had to work with the company in, 2.5, 3 years, maybe 2 years. For those that don't know, Wes and I were previously with Ample. Ample was acquired by Akerna. Akerna is a U.S. company. They had a product called MJ Freeway, which had to integrate with metric. And metric was a nightmare to deal with in those days. Now, have things changed? I don't know. Is it different if you are integrated with that technology? Maybe. Anyways, very prevalent tracking and compliance tech within the US. Seems they're moving into Canada a little bit. And this is with their retail program. I forget exactly what it's called, but Plant Life, Cannabis out of Alberta, and Token Naturals are running a pilot program with METRC to utilize their retail tech. I'll call it tech. Now, as we know, in Canada, current regulations will not allow you to put a barcode on a product. It won't. But this is...
QR code, yeah.
That's right. But this is kind of the segue into what they've been talking about when it comes to reform and allowing QR codes. Now, Plant Life and Token are not saying, let's fucking go, we're just going to do it anyways. They are looking and anticipating at the future of what could happen. So from what I understand is this QR code, which we've talked about at length, right? Like for the long, if you could put a QR code on a product, you can unlock so much information behind that. Consumer education, COAs, you name it. Anything you want to display, send them to a portal via, a QR code, and you're golden. Now, they're not putting the QR codes. When I first started reading the article, I'm like, and thank you, Stratcann, you're always on top of it. First started reading the article, I'm like, ooh, how the fuck are they going to do this? And then they talk about the proposed regulation change or the reform. And I'm like, yeah, so they're just going to do it. And then it gets into, so what they are going to do by the sounds of it, maybe Ian can confirm in comments if this is a broken out clip, is they're going to hand the consumer or the purchaser a QR that would be for the token. I think they're just going to pilot on the Token Natural side for right now and via Plant Life, which would then give the consumer the ability to scan it, unlock all that information. Now, what information are they going to display at first or out of the gate? I'm not sure. But for those that are interested, I mean, maybe there's going to be COA information, more terpene profiles and content. It could be, when you think about it, given the state of advertising and marketing in this industry, maybe you could lead them over to a cool AR site or, some sort of interactive education session, right? Anyways, it's cool. I was a little triggered with METRC at first. I'm like, oh, God, METRC.
Yeah, it's METRC Retail ID is the name of the
METRC Retail
program.
ID. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think they had that. We wouldn't have had to live too close to that anyways, but I don't think they had that 2 years ago.
No, I don't think so. But METRC must have come a long way because I'm seeing myself like at least 3 of their state contracts got renewed this year.
Yeah.
Although from what I remember, I don't think there's much of a choice. If I remember right, the whole thing was like...
They have BioTrack or they have METRC. I think they compete for each other. Obviously, Akerna was trying to enter that space. it's born from the LP side, right? So your
Right.
producer processor, and they need to track. So not unlike what Ample Organics does, Grower IQ, Certicraft, you name it, right? They are all compliant software that are required at the LP level. Some of them allow for manufacturing, ingredients, additives, et cetera, et cetera. You get into highly advanced ERPs like Cannabis 365, which I think has changed names now, but that's required at the LP level. They then roll that up, right? So it's not provincially, they roll that to the federal government the way that Canada is designed. It's different in the US because it's not federally legal.
Right.
And I don't think it'll change. So state by state, they needed a compliant system, which you weren't forced to use METRC. Well, I shouldn't say that. Let me back up. METRC, if you want a state contract, let's say, I don't even remember which states they were in, but let's say Colorado.
Illinois is one, for example.
Illinois, right. So they would use METRC at the state level. You could use different compliance software at the LP, right? So the license holder, we'll just say license holder, and but that software, let's call it was MJ Freeway, had to integrate with METRC to be able to move all those data points in. How much cannabis are you producing? How many plants do you have? How much are you destroying, et cetera, et cetera. METRC went a step further. They were, I think, first on scene that introduced an RFID. So you could track all the plants, the movement, et cetera. I hated that idea. And I think most state operators hated it as well. Just because of the sheer expense. It was, like $1.50 per tag or something like that. Not to mention the waste, right? I remember in those days, there was always some outcry about this system has to change. Look at the waste, look at the piles of RFID tags we have to deal with. Anyways, so bringing that back to Canada, sure, the METRC Retail ID may work. I would think for them to have those data points, though, because I'm just looking at it from integration, and you know this a lot better than I do, but you have your various license holders running your Ample, your Grower IQ, your Certicraft, all those, right? That information would then need to have the ability to feed. So if I'm Token Naturals, I need my COAs, I need whatever information I'm going to display. But I guess it comes down to what are you trying to communicate to your consumer, right?
Well, this is my question as well, is this all seems great. I'm just worried that I hope that there's a standardized, if you want to use METRC Retail ID as an LP, here is the baked-in standard stuff you need to provide.
Right.
I hope, because what I would hate as a consumer is to scan a QR code from one brand, land on that page, and I get tons and tons of data points, which is awesome. And then I scan a product from another, that seems to be the same type of QR. I scan that, and I get lot number and package date, and that's it, right?
Yeah. Give us the harvest date.
Yeah, hopefully something is standardized to say, if you want to use this system, everyone at least has to have this baseline of, so it's standardized, right? So the consumers can come to expect the same from each product.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe we should hop on with Ian at some time or at some point, or someone from Token, just to understand how are they rolling out, what information. I just like to stay abreast of it, because I think that it's something that we've wanted to see for the longest time. Obviously, solutions need to be developed, and they have one. In the States, state by state, it's different, but QR codes are allowed. And we've said for how long? QR codes will be a game changer. Even just that minor ability to put a QR code on.
Also wild to me that it's illegal to put that QR code on the product, but they're allowed to hand them the QR code in store. Is that actually allowed, or is that like kind of like a gray area loophole?
Well, I think
if it is,
like becomes
that's
education,
insane.
Right? It technically becomes education. I wouldn't see why. I mean, it would be a fucking logistical nightmare, but you could have posters within that retail environment for every brand with a QR code. Why they don't do that, I haven't seen any, is beyond me. Brands, if you have posters in retail environments, I implore you, please put a QR code on it. Drive them back to your website. Create something cool and experiential. Oh, experiential. We'll do one of them. But they have the perfect opportunity to be able to directing. That is allowed, right? It's not on the cannabis product. It's for educational purposes. I don't know.
Well, I mean, a lot of brands have a tough enough time keeping the website up to date as it is. So
yeah,
I can imagine that's a.
But I mean, but this is just what separates the pack, right? You can either be forward thinking and adopting strategies from other industries that are technically allowed. I mean, you just have to get creative. But why not? Like there's got to be, I don't know, man. There's got to be some benefits to the consumer, right? I don't know. I guess you look at, other than what did Snoop Dogg do on wine? There was something crimes or rhymes or 99 rhymes, but you could like scan and there's like this augmented reality on a bottle of wine, and you don't see that stuff a lot, but it also begs the question: are we paying enough attention to the ingredients and the rest of the fucking shit that we consume? I don't think we are. Some people are, and we'll find out with Jill when Jill and Sarah are on. Apparently, she is the most in-depth label reader there is. So, which probably makes sense as to why Blunt Botanicals is so much into sustainability. Anyways, we'll welcome, who we got on first? Dina Rollman. We will welcome Dina after this break. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Dina Rollman, CEO of Power Plant and StrainBrain. How are you, Dina?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for joining Legacies from beautiful, snowy Chicago.
Yeah, just 5 below here. No big deal.
5 below. That's not so big. Did you guys get a lot of snow? We love talking about the weather. I think
it's the constant topic of conversation here. No, sadly, we didn't get a lot of snow, which means like you can't cross country ski. There's limited sledding for little kids, all that. It's just cold.
Okay. Wes, she said sadly.
Yeah, we're pretty burdened up here. I'm pretty jealous. So
we got like 15 inches in less than 36 hours, and it was nuts. Anyways, you're not new to the cannabis industry. Let's first talk about what.
I've got the gray hairs, the bags under my eyes.
Yeah. Please, come on. So you spent, I don't know, some time. I like to say sentence sometimes, depending on the company I'm speaking about. But you were one of the founding team members, I think, with GTI Green Thumb Industries, but also their senior vice president, legal counsel. I mean, you just did a lot of stuff there.
I did a lot. Yeah.
What was that like?
Adventure of a lifetime, honestly. I went from pretty boring, stayed kind of law firm lawyer, right? You're like, I made partner, you're sort of like in this particular world. That's
climb that corporate ladder in the legal side.
I did. And when you work with all lawyers, you are working with the most risk averse people. I mean, next to like insurance or actuaries or something, you're in the land of like very risk averse. And as a litigator, all you're doing is trying to figure out like, okay, something went very wrong here, because that's why these people are suing each other, and like how do we make the best case out of a bad situation? So it's not about growth and opportunity and building something. It's like the thing has already failed, and like you're helping.
You're just trying to put the pieces back together somehow.
Yeah.
But it's what brought you to Green Thumb? Like, what was because I know you're also the founder of, is it Chicago Women in Cannabis?
Illinois Women in
Cannabis. Yeah, sorry. But did that come with being with GTI, or like what led you to GTI and this crazy cannabis adventure?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing you would have scripted exactly. When I went to law school, there was no such thing as a cannabis lawyer. So on some level, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but the horizons were sort of naturally limited, I guess.
Can I correct you on that? There was lawyers that defended those that were in the cannabis.
That is true. That is true. Criminal defense
lawyers did well. Some of their clients did.
That's true. That's true. That I felt like I was not born to do that. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So I was trying to find like, where can I use kind of like my passions and strengths, and it wasn't immediately obvious. So I was sort of like doing the law thing, but not completely inspired, right? And then but all along, like in college, I, volunteered with Normal. I always enjoyed cannabis. I mean, let's be real. There was no legal access, but I was always a fan, right?
Well, you're with a bunch of risk-adverse people.
Yeah, so I didn't really talk about my cannabis use.
Exactly.
It was,
Dina, oh my God.
Right. I used to follow the Grateful Dead. Like I sort of had a pre-lawyer life that was like much more like fun and adventurous and canna friendly, let's say.
Yeah.
And then I went straight, right?
At least on the surface.
On the surface. Like, I can present very like suburban soccer mom lawyer. I can do that. So that's what I did. And but I would definitely say there was something missing for me passion-wise, but I just didn't know where to go, what to do. And then when Illinois legalized medical cannabis, it was like, just this godsend to me because they did it legislatively. So
Right.
the legislators had to negotiate, which now is kind of unthinkable, a bipartisan bill, that's 100 pages long where you get everybody to agree and the governor to sign it. Like that was 2013. Let's just say that was a
Wow.
different era of, bipartisan cooperation.
Okay.
And so it was this awesome thing because the law was written out where they hammered out all the important details of an entirely brand new industry of, there's going to be 21 cultivation facilities. There's going to be 60 dispensaries. These are the zones that they can be in the state. They broke the state into zones. This is how much money you have to show that you have. This is how these are the pesticides that are allowed. Like there was no detail too small. There were literally like waste disposal elements of it.
Wow.
Like, so like as somebody used to reading laws, like I could read it and see it.
Okay.
Right. So being
whereas
a lawyer,
opposed to like trying to like, what the hell are they even thinking here? What are they trying to accomplish?
all that legalese, fortunately, the legal background helped because I could read it and I could it was very visual for me what I was reading.
Okay.
And it just massively exciting. Like this industry doesn't exist today, but they've mapped out so even someone as uncreative as me can kind of just see what is going to be created here.
Yeah.
And oh my God, are they going to need lawyers? Like, this is crazy. This is 100 pages of legalese and it's a Schedule I drug, like you can't mess around here. If you don't do it well, you're winding up in jail. So like the players who want to do this right are going to need help. And so it was really just like right place, right time, right stage in my legal career where I felt like I knew enough to know how to help clients do this, right? Got introduced through a mutual friend to Ben Kovler, the founder CEO of GTI. And I had already been starting to give presentations about the Illinois law. I was already digging in on Friday nights on my own, just kind of like, wow, this is exciting. What can I do here? And I wasn't sure what I could do. And I met him and he was really loved that I was the first lawyer he'd met who was just genuinely passionate about this and not just waiting to get like hired as another job to make money, but like actually like, wait, I can help bring legalization into Illinois. Like, so we were very, kind of, the vibes were good. You know what I mean? We were aligned on like, what are we doing here? He was passionate about it and he put together a team of people that were like, let's do this. Let's go for it. This is like the dream, right?
Yeah.
So that just fueled a lot of energy for all of us. We worked our asses off. I mean, as a lawyer, I don't say that lightly. Like I worked harder in the early days of GTI than I did as like an overworked law firm lawyer.
That's saying something because we know what those billable hours are like and how they climb out of law school, right?
Right. But what was awesome is like all of a sudden I wasn't billing hours, right? I got permission from my law firm. I said, can I just take like a timeout on all my cases and just go full force on this for a few months and then, come back. And they thought I was, crazy. And like, I don't know. They were not, it made no sense to them, but fortunately they were like, yeah, okay, you do you. So
wow.
I was able to just give like 125% to the effort, go all in. It was so fun for me working with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And stoners and, kind of just like a totally different demographic.
That's like weird makeup, right? Entrepreneurial stoners. And I mean, in a lot of cases, they go hand to hand. They really
do in this industry, right?
Yeah,
I mean, certainly there are some people that have gotten in who don't care at all about the plans. It's just money and all that, but not this group.
And certain ideas probably should have just stayed in the head rather than, right? Because we've all had that high, that's a brilliant idea. The next day it's like, what was I smoking?
Yes.
Like that is the worst idea I've ever had.
Definitely. But we were, it's smart group. Look, Ben is like one of the smartest people I've ever met, and he worked harder than I did. He never slept. He's like a guy that doesn't need a lot of sleep. So he just worked his ass off. We had a team that was just like driven and passionate and intent on winning. Right. And so that's how kind of it all got started. And when you apply for that first license in Illinois, it's all or nothing. You either win a license or you don't. And if you don't, you pack up your toys and you go home. Right.
Wow.
So we kind of knew like there's no guarantee here, but let's go for it. So we went for it and we won. So then it was like, okay, well, now we have to build a couple of cultivation facilities, build out a dispensary, like get patients as customers. I mean, you're building an entirely new business from scratch overnight. By the way, at the time in Illinois, You had 6 months from the time you were awarded a license to get your cultivation facility operational.
Wow. That's
So
crazy. But at least, in the early days in Canada, you probably saw some echoes, at least anyways. You had to have your facility built. Like everything was basically go time. And then with application, they come and they inspect everything, dot the I's, cross the T's, you're good to go. But at least there you had, okay, we can put the application in, this is how we're going to do it. But 6 months,
to build it from scratch.
That's crazy.
There was no existing building.
Why would they think that 6 months is like, were they borrowing legislation from other industries? Like how, like obviously you pulled it off, but like, or are they just looking at this going, let's fuck with them a bit. Let's really mess them up.
It's a great question.
We know it's a year, but let's do it in 6.
It was wild. It was wild. So we did it, we got creative and, very strategic because, you're like this, again, you don't own the license when you are in a regulated state. The state, basically is like renting you the license every year. And if you don't perform, they can yank it. So you never have that kind of like, it'll be fine.
Sure.
Like you can't have that sort of phony, like, it's all fine. No worries.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you better worry about every freaking detail here.
Jeez.
So
in Illinois at the time, what was was it METRC BioTrack? What were they at the time?
It was, BioTrack on the state side. They did not mandate what you used on your own side.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we tried using that on BioTrack, but back in the day, the APIs to link whatever you wanted to use.
Don't need to see. I triggered Wes this morning. METRC's making small maneuvers into Canada with their Retail ID program. And I said that, I go, Wes, I'm going to trigger you because we spent we'll call it sentence, the U.S. working the tech side. And as soon as I said METRC, he's like, oh, kill me.
Yes. Yeah. We were like NJ Freeway. We used something called Track Via. We went through like our share of different programs. One was, the bigger nightmare than the next. It was all, that was stuff was
all a
very
fledgling industry on its own, right? Tech and cannabis, like, one small line of code equals so much more when it comes to the actual regulations. It was very difficult. It still is. It's still a very difficult field.
It is. And in Illinois, they were like, if your inventory system goes down, you have to close your store.
Yeah.
So I would get these panicked calls because I was like the legal and compliance person. So it'd be a Saturday afternoon and I get this like panic call, like BioTrack is down. What do we do? Do we have to like literally, like we have 100 customers in the store. Do we have to like tell them to go home? And I'm calling the regulators. Like it was, it was a wild time.
Oh my God. I couldn't imagine being in your position in a new industry. Like every question must have come to you, every single question. Because I remember just from the tech side, as we were, product development. So, your product people are on stuff. Can we do this? Does it align with the regs? Blah, blah, blah. And then you finally commit to some code before it's even released. But every question would roll to our GC and they're like, I don't know. I don't want to. Then very few people wanted to put their signature on stuff, right? Because it was so new. We were trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Again, that's where like, my legal background really wasn't like straight relevant to cannabis, but I had 15 years of being a lawyer under my belt.
You could read the legislation.
Yeah. I dealt with a whole lot of business situations of one kind or another. I'd worked in state government for a couple of years. So was my judgment perfect? No. Did I always know the answer? No. But I kind of had enough confidence to say, I'm not guaranteeing an answer here, but I felt pretty good about it. And it went pretty well. In the very early days, what was funny is, literally everything was written in the statute, every rule, everything. But I was with a bunch of non-lawyers, again, who like, those people are not comfortable looking at page 67, subparagraph E to find the answer. So they'd ask me a question and I was like, and I would just spit out an answer. They thought I was like a genius, and I was like, it's just written there in black and white. You're
just cementing your position at GTI even more. Yeah. That's wild. So the rollout, you get the facility built, everything's, I would say, cooking, 6 months in.
Yeah.
And when was that? When was construction?
So we applied in fall of 2014, September 2014.
Yeah.
We won, got the announcement that we won in February of 2015. I am not joking. A week later, I quit my job at the law firm and was like, bye, I'm all in on cannabis with GTI. I understand this is like a once in a lifetime risk I'm taking, but I am going for it. And So then it was on to the next, because it was like, okay, now we have to apply for licenses in Maryland and Pennsylvania and Ohio. And I had led the application team in Illinois. Again, is like the kind of like anal retentive lawyer who can like track that you've dotted every I and crossed every T and all of that. So that was kind of a full-time job in and of itself, just managing these applications, writing content, editing content, pulling all the documents requested, all that. But then also, as we were winning licenses, being the compliance person. So as they were building out a facility, keeping an eye on every detail to make sure it was getting done according to the regs or according to our application. So it was heavy compliance, I guess I would say, in one form or fashion. Legal and compliance, like definitely hardcore. And after about, I don't know, 5 years of that, I was like, okay, maybe somebody else could like have some fun here. And, maybe I could probably expand my role or shift it a little bit.
Right.
So that's what I did. And so, I don't know, 5 years in, let's call it, I shifted. And at that point, we were in 10 states or something like that.
Wow.
And, in cannabis, every state has its different regulations. You're at the mercy of what's going on in each state. So I said, it's time for us to have a formal government affairs department. So we start really leaning in here, understanding what the proposed legislation is, having some advocacy around that. When we're stuck with bad regulations that don't make any sense for our business, we can focus on getting those regulations changed so they made sense. So that's when I created our government affairs department.
Wow.
Started hiring lobbyists, joining the trade associations, and really getting GTI much more into like that piece of the industry.
Yeah. What a contrast difference. Like, Wes, you're catching that, right? Like, forming your own government affairs is one thing. Like, we have that in Canada at certain big players, right?
Yeah.
But then you talk about hiring lobbyists.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not in Canada. I mean, there's some lobbying obviously going on, but most of it is at the grassroots level, right? It's how do we engage consumers so that they're aware of the overtaxation and the crazy regulations? How do we have a united voice, right? It's still a lot of kumbaya, and there is no movement on that needle. I shouldn't say that they, Health Canada, they at least assess and look and talk reform, but it ain't coming anytime soon. It really isn't.
Yeah.
So the fact that, it's such a contrast difference of way it operates and you can operate. And don't get me wrong, I know there's challenges. I could just imagine, state to state requirements, and you get used to operating a certain way, right? Especially within Illinois. And you're like, oh, we're going to Maryland. What the hell are these regulations? Like these, it's almost like a different language in some cases.
I mean, I basically, as we brought employees on and marketing people and all that, I would say, look, about 80% of these regs are the same state to state. But that 20% is the change is everything. Like that's where you can really get in trouble. So it was a big adjustment when marketing or branding people would come in and they would be very excited about the new, packaging and labeling that they'd created. And I'd say, okay, that's awesome for Illinois. But by the way, in Pennsylvania, you also need this language and this language and this language. And they're literally specifying font size and font sometimes and required warning language, like by the word. Like you can't change one word.
Right. Yeah. Oh, we know that. We live by that. You would love our laws.
Yeah. But you have, one law. So this was like, they're like, wait a minute, like we're going to have to create different packaging and labeling for every state.
Such an expense.
Yes, you will. And so then I'm begging a regulator, can we have a 6-month extension to use up the stuff from this? Like, you're sort of always sort of on the one hand internally saying like, yeah, guys, these are the rules. Like, this is what we need to do. And then with the regulators, like, please, like, where's some discretion or, extension or whatever? Because my people are losing their shit over here. So I think part of why I did do well at GTI was like, I really felt for the business side of it that like, yeah, some of these regulations are crazy. They make no sense. I am not defending them. I am working so hard for you guys to get them changed. Like, I agree. These are bad for our business and they're not protecting consumers. So like, let's get rid of them. So like, I got you. You don't need to convince me. I'm doing everything I can for you. But in the meantime, until I can get that changed, really need you guys to buy in here
Yeah.
that, the way we're going to win in the long term is to do things like the right way. We don't want to get fined. If we get our license suspended, you're going to be talking to Ben about that. And like good luck, right? So
Yeah.
like let's not get to that scenario. So it
Right,
was a balancing act of compliance versus the business needs that, because I'd been around since day one, I very viscerally understood where we had to absolutely comply to the letter of the law, where I could say, okay, I'll buy you a little bit of space here, a
Right,
little bit of risk is okay over here,
But that comes with experience. And then also, technically puts you in high demand, right? Because you're so ingrained and understand the industry, let alone the company, but it's the industry, right? It's those formative years of, this is the way it's rolling out, and we're seeing the state to state. But what came to an end for you with GTI, where now you're with Power Plant?
Yeah.
Like, was it just the sweet talk of Noel Berkman, or?
Well, so, it's sort of like when a marriage ends and you start a new relationship, you're like, there was no overlap. Like, so here there was
Right.
no, me leaving GTI happened. And honestly, it'd been, 9 years straight
Yeah.
of just one rocket ship. And it was awesome. So for me, it was not a sentence. It was really the opportunity of a lifetime for 8 million reasons. It was excellent. And it was a very orderly transition out. I was just ready to kind of catch my breath and think of be more intentional about what do I want to be doing. And,
Right.
at that point at GTI, like the market downturn had already happened. We were not in that lovely heyday period of before where it was like, oh, you have a new idea of like a new venture we should do or a thing. I, for years, got to be very entrepreneurial within GTI, which great. I got a lot of rope, a lot of support for ideas I had, build a new department. Sure. Like we need it. Great. Go do it. That the environment wasn't that at the time. It was more for everybody, like hunker down.
Yeah.
We got to just kind of get through this period. And I was like, okay, I don't know how much value I'm adding at this point, in just maintaining the status quo. I'm ready to have the next adventure. So, very orderly transition out. Took some time off. I had the privilege.
Oh, I know what that means.
I
had to take about 1.5 years off after, my stint with Cannabis Tech. And I'm like, I still miss it.
Yeah.
I'm coming back in to do something else.
Well, similar. So, with taking time off, I really wasn't sure, will I stay in cannabis or have I just, is it crazy to stay in this crazy world of ours? Should I be going somewhere that's maybe not so challenging on a daily basis? So I evaluated that. I met with different startups. I evaluated different opportunities. Nothing was quite speaking to me. Yes, and then I met the charming Noel Berkman, who's just my neighbor here,
I was
by the
going to
way.
say, you guys don't have to travel far to sweet talk and bring each other into other companies. The whole nexus of everything cannabis and tech is right there in your neighborhood.
It's true. We literally met at my, corner coffee shop. And initially he and one of his partners was just feeling me out. We have this idea to acquire StrainBrain. What do you think? They wanted sort of industry expert perspective on it. And so I sort of came into the conversation just as an outside objective assessment of what is this thing? It doesn't have legs. And then I got excited. Then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I want StrainBrain at my local dispensary. Tell me more.
Right.
And
when
so
you can see it solving a problem, I want you to expand on that. But when you see something that solves your own problems that you experience yourself, everything changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what was that point where, because you talked about the acquisition, I don't know if we can go into that, but I would like to highlight it if we can.
Sure.
Canadian company.
Yes.
It was did you get all the Canada flags off of everything in there? But what was it about StrainBrain, first of all? Because we can talk about the formation of Power Plant, which is the parent of where StrainBrain resides. But what was it that stood out about the concept of this so much for you? You'd already shared it in a previous discussion. That's why it was so enlightening. I'm like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, as a proud, green thumb person, I generally stick to buying green thumb products when I shop at my dispensary, which is a green thumb dispensary, right? I kind of keep it all in the family. But, sometimes would like to venture out of my like tried and trues, either within the GTI family of products or other brands. But more often it's that I'm traveling and I'm in Vegas or Colorado or wherever, and my tried and true products aren't available.
Right.
And I find myself at kind of a loss, like as if I've just like never smoked cannabis in my life. Like I just look at these menus and I'm like exhausted, and I don't enjoy that shopping experience because I'm like, okay, I don't shop by THC percentage. That's not my jam. I don't shop by price. That's not my jam. I will pay for like premium flower, right?
We laugh. Wes and I are laughing because we've been through this so much, like with so much experience in the industry.
Yeah.
Working with so many brands.
Yeah.
You kind of have an idea, like you're talking about, say, what's true to you. We go in with an idea of, I think I want this. And then you're just overwhelmed by SKU saturation. It is. And especially if they have it on display, like menus are one thing. Like in Canada, we still have some retail environments that use like binders. They are binders. And you're flipping through alphabetized going, I don't know what the hell I'm looking for now.
That would just actually not work for me. But no, I was like, so StrainBrain, what it does is it plugs into the e-com menu and it syncs with, your Dutchie or Jane inventory. And it's just asking you 4 simple questions, what form factor, what effect do you want? And like for everything, there's options. So you don't have to type anything or wonder about terminology or spelling or a dumb answer or whatever. You're just like, form factor, here's your options. Effects, here are 8 options. Flavor profile, here are 8 options, and then a little slider bar for strength. You want to be on like the weaker to the stronger, so you're not thinking what THC percentage equates strong.
Right.
You're not thinking indica or sativa or terpene or cannabinoid. No terminology needed, no math, no nothing. And it's putting your preferences against what's in the store's inventory and coming out within seconds with your top 3 matches.
Wow.
So I was like, great, you've just like winnowed down this massive menu of 100 options for me into top 3 on an objective basis, not because it's, I love my bud tenders, right? The good ones are irreplaceable.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But they come in with their biases of like what they like to consume.
Yeah.
We know also within the industry, there's, what they're told in the back of house, like this is what you're promoting.
Here's your spiff and riff. These are the ones that we want you to be pumping out. And then I don't know what it's like in the US, but I mean, we've got a ton of pay to plays, right? So the data deals that are happening, which is not uncommon to CPG, it makes sense, but not all programs are created equal. So regardless of that, but like I see this as, I think when you had taken the helm with StrainBrain, there was a post and I had kind of reshared it just through our channels to say, what are your thoughts? And people viewed it just as an AI bud tender. And I'm like, guys, it's so much more and we're going to unpack it. Yeah. But you need to understand it's not to replace, because I think that's where everyone, for right reasons, everyone's afraid that AI is taking their jobs, right? Yes. And in this case, it's complementary to the retail location and the bud tender, because you're right. Being objective is very difficult. Now, tech can solve it, but sometimes it's just top of mind awareness, right? And the bud tenders don't even realize they're doing it necessarily. There's their preferences, great, but sometimes it's the t-shirt that they pulled out of their closet that morning and they don't realize, this is, Awana or cookies or something. And you should try cookies. I don't know why I recommended that. Or there was a poster over your shoulder as you were speaking to a customer, right?
Right.
So the fact that this can dial that in, because I think we live in a bubble, Dina, right? Because we're in the industry, we live in the bubble and we think, everyone knows just as much as we do. We don't necessarily consciously make that decision. But, when you speak to individuals in the industry, the conversations are much different than Uncle John or someone else that's not in the industry as a consumer. They are completely overwhelmed, right? And then when they come to you and they're like, they think they've got the information, you're like, that's old news. Like, what are you even talking about? So with StrainBrain, you dial it into these 3 beautiful decisions or options.
Yeah.
What is the next step from there?
So, either you're like, cool, I like 1, 2, or 3 of these, and you just click add to cart and you're good to go.
Beautiful.
You can log into your loyalty program if your dispensary is offering that option and say, yes, I want this and I want it to count towards my loyalty points.
Okay.
Good to go. Or, again, like thinking about the value of a bud tender, it could be that you've gotten it that far and you've got your top 3 options. And now you still want some help because you're like, okay, well, out of these 3, how do I decide? Or I don't know, I want to kind of understand this better. You could just take that to your bud tender and say, so StrainBrain is telling me these are my top 3 options. Can you, what do you think? Do you like these for me based on what I'm looking for? Do you think one is better than the other? Then you can still be engaging the bud tender, but we've at least helped advance the conversation.
Right.
So every bud tender isn't like, let's start from ground zero and like form factor and da da da. We can just save the bud tender, honestly, some time that isn't always the best well spent because it's just like getting the basics handled. And then, the bud tenders either like loves the StrainBrain recommendations. Look, I get it. Bud tenders have opinions. They may say, I don't like these. I like mine better. And, that's okay, right?
Right.
Like we've offered a tool to the customer to say, let's talk about these. Here, this gives me something to start with where I don't need to know any terminology or anything, but here's 3 products that were recommended to me. What do you think? And then, or maybe the bud tender validates it and they could just go ahead and purchase all 1, 2, or 3 products. What we have seen, and again, this is solving a problem on the customer end because I think.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, natural transition to. So we've got the value prop on the customer side.
Yes.
But now let's talk the value prop on the retail side.
Right. So we know in the cannabis industry, the majority of customers that come to your store are, in at least the US, are one-time customers.
Wow.
There's just a real problem with getting people to come back. Yep.
That's crazy.
And there's a huge problem with abandoned shopping carts from online shoppers. There is no bud tender there to help them. So they're looking at this overwhelming menu. They're just not confident that they're buying something that's worth then driving to go pick it up. They're like, I don't know, is this going to da-da-da? So the abandoned shopping carts are a huge issue. Getting repeat customers is a huge issue. So all of a sudden you've put something in customers' hands that doesn't overwhelm them or scare them away because there's no terminology needed. You're getting them away from being just price shoppers. Some of our competitors allow you to filter by price. We think that's kind of the exact wrong approach. Like cannabis is over commoditized right now. And you do have a lot of people that are like, well, what's the most THC I can get for the buck?
Right.
Dispensaries can't build their businesses around those types of customers.
No.
That's like a race to the bottom. Where you're like,
that's a losing formula. Yes.
It is. Let's just keep cutting price to, beat the guy down the street. And before you know it, we're both out of business. So we're like, we want your customers shopping by the effect that they want, not just like this old notion of like THC to price is going to get me the best experience. We know it's not the best experience.
And there'll always be some of those customers. And that's totally fine. It's just a matter of, because I'm just thinking of, I go to my favorite retail online, looking for a specific product. I click on a category, maybe flower or pre-rolls. And then you're just inundated with the amount of scrolling. And to get to some menus are done well, some not so well. So the information may be displayed if I click on it, but otherwise it might not be. But now I'm spending countless amounts of time. Like, I don't want to say hours because I just get frustrated and I'm like, I'm done.
Same.
But 20, 30 minutes of just scrolling through products. And in the US, a little bit different, but in Canada, you get a shot of a pre-roll. Guess what? Your pre-roll looks the same as the other ones, unless it's got a branded filter. Like, it doesn't look that much different, right? So from there, now it gets difficult. But let's come back to the consumer on the retail side. So you get the abandoned carts.
Yeah.
Because we're all talking increased cart. This is not a new strategy.
No.
It's been used forever in e-com. So anyways, what are you seeing? So
here we go is now you have a customer that feels a lot more confident about the purchase. So they are completing it. It's not an abandoned cart. So there you go. Already, like, that's a win. They're a lot more confident. So they complete the purchase. They're much more likely to have a good experience with the product. Now they're like, oh, I liked how I navigated your website. I got quickly to a product that met what I was looking for. I like this place. I'm going to come back, and now you've got somebody who isn't just purely shopping by that THC price thing. They're like, I want cannabis because I want to feel a certain way. I want help sleeping, or I want to feel energized or whatever. And hey, thank you, store. You got me to that
Right.
Tech that I wanted, I'm back. This was great. I'll buy this again.
Right.
So it immediately translates on average to a 20% average increase of 20% in that shopping cart size.
Jeez, that is incredible. I'm still drawn back to like one visit. Like the loyalty's just not like, are you overwhelmed? Like within Chicago, I mean, what's the population in Chicago? On the spot.
I know. I'm like, wow. Okay. Illinois, I know is like about 14 million. So
is it like 1.6 somewhere in there? Does that? There we go. So how many retail locations would there be? Like,
well, so I mean, it's interesting, right? Because Illinois was one of those limited license markets. So, from 2015 until 2020, when we went rec, there were 60 stores for the entire state of 14 million people.
Oh, okay.
So that was a whole different,
Right.
can of worms over there. Now once with adult use, they issued a bunch more licenses. So I'm sure in the Chicago area, it's at least doubled. How many? And even within Chicago, I would say it's not quite as like bad, I guess I would say, as people in other markets I know where literally they just look at their phone and they can drive a mile in any direction to a store.
Yeah, but what's doing that? What's causing that? Have you been able to get to the root of why there's no loyalty? I mean, there's probably mild amounts of loyalty.
Well, because
it's
stores,
close, but
the customer experience for most stores is pretty equivalent, right? You're either at the kiosk or talking to the bartender, but you get in line, you get your transaction, you walk out. Like there's not a whole lot that's going to differentiate the experience. And then your e-com website hasn't differentiated amongst the products you're offering versus anyone else's. The menus, largely look the same. So that's when you get into shoppers that are like, okay, I'll just go for the cheapest then.
Right.
And I will drive an extra mile to save $5 or $10 rather than just be loyal to one. And then stores are dealing with this environment where they're like, okay, what's our weekly specials, our daily specials,
Right.
like the loyalty programs to get the discounts. And they're fighting for market share amongst a pretty fickle population. It's tough out there. I know it, right?
Yeah, firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is giving you a way to say, okay, but we're, this for now, this is a differentiator. As I'm out there selling StrainBrain, it's not like anyone I talk to already has some equivalent. They don't. They're like, what is this? Like, how does this work? We are introducing a brand new feature to dispensaries to offer their customers. And like one of our biggest customers right now is Greenlight. They have StrainBrain running in 33 or 34 stores across multiple states. And in some of their markets, it's part of their radio ads, which, they do actually do radio ads in some markets.
That's cool.
Depending on where you are, like that works to hit your target market.
Yeah.
And they will say on the radio ad, now we're offering an AI-powered bud tender to help you make your make your decisions. And they really do get direct feedback that like people come in and they're like, wait, so tell me about this. Like, what is this? So it's a differentiator to get people into your store versus somebody else's.
That's pretty wild to use the technology as your USP. Wild. Like congratulations on that, because we know what the adoption of technology is like. But is it only for the e-com or those that are on, a website, but be it mobile or web, doesn't matter?
It could be on the in-store kiosk as well.
That's what I was going to ask. Yep. So, and for these locations, because I realize that not all locations would necessarily have an in-store kiosk, are you able to offer some sort of hardware that goes with it? And I'm thinking like MJ Freeway and all this. Oh my God, this was a nightmare. But I'm looking at this as an opportunity where it's so valuable. Some of these stores, they're basic. I'm not going to go as basic as, our Maritimes, binders.
You're right.
But if you're able to offer even just the iPads or a tablet of some sort where now they can go through this decision making.
So that's up to the store. I mean, we're not, providing iPads. There's kind of no need. A store knows best sort of how many they need and who uses them and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's, mobile, desktop, iPad, kiosk.
Yeah.
Any one of those interfaces works just fine.
And is it more so a pop-up? So if I visit one of these retail locations website, is it a pop-up that's coming up, or is it some sort of banner display?
It's effectively a pop-up. And so when you're at the dispensary's menu page, it could be bottom left, bottom right. Like the placement is up to the store. And, you know, we've done a lot of A/B testing on what is the optimal size of the thing and the placement. So, you know, we have definite recommendations about how to do all that. But, you know, ultimately a store has some amount of control to play with it and see. You know, if you have 33 stores, guess what? Let's try it 5 stores this way, this setup, and 5 over here, and see what gets the best traction. But it's effectively a button that will say either like, want help getting a recommendation, you know, want a virtual bud tender, like whatever store can customize the words.
Sure.
The net effect is,
if
you want some help with your journey here.
So it's your AI chat basically is,
But
and then it gives you,
not
and it takes you even further. Right.
Right.
You're going through the recommendation. Yeah.
It's so much better than a chat because, you know, and in the early days of StrainBrain before we acquired it, I think that they did test out like a chat feature. But then you get right back into that same thing where you've got a customer who's like, well,
you're asking me too many questions.
You're asking me too many questions. You're asking me to even know how to formulate the question. And you might ask, you know, the chat's going to ask me what terpene profile or THC percentage I'm looking for. I mean, most customers are like, I have no freaking idea, you know? So it's not a chat. Very intentionally, it's like you're prompted with 4 questions. It's a multiple choice test where there's no wrong answer. So it just, you know, it's like kind of like take the weight off the customer to need to come prepared, basically. You know,
have you been able to collect feedback on how happy the customer is based on those recommendations? Like, is there a follow-up loop with StrainBrain at all or anything like that?
You know, what we see is just the data coming out that, you know, people who use StrainBrain are much more likely to complete the purchase and spend more. And then especially when you tie it to their loyalty program, then you can see that yes, they are returning. And StrainBrain can even let the store kind of play with the loyalty points. So you could say, for instance, hey, you know, we have a new AI-powered bud tender program for you to use. The first time you use it, you get, you know, 5 points and, you know, 3 points every time thereafter. But once a week, and then we're not going to tell you which day, you're going to get double points just for using it. And so then you've got people interacting and sort of gamifying your loyalty system in a good way where they're at your site more often. They're seeing an extra advantage to completing the purchase at your store because it's not, you know, it's an extra loyalty points for the same money they were going to spend anyways. So, you know, there's nice synergies that we build in there as well.
I love it. I'd love to see. So do you have plans to launch this into Canada with the retail locations?
Yeah, because StrainBrain was, you know, co-founded by 2 Canadians. They already have StrainBrain running in, you know, in the Canadian market. So Power Plant is our, you know, investor group that came together to acquire StrainBrain. We're all US based. I'm 10 years into the US cannabis industry, not Canadian. So our focus really right now is the US market and, you know, gaining market share there. With Canada is a piece of that.
Yeah. Well, you already mentioned it, you know, the buzzword once, which I see just massive amounts of data collection here.
Yes.
Is StrainBrain more geared towards that, or, you know, the UX UI, you know, for the consumer? Because there's a massive amount of data here.
Yeah, but it's much more focused on using the data to improve the customer experience. Right. So what we're seeing, you know, we're meeting with all these retailers because of some of the shopping that's happening on, you know, just shopping via price or THC. It's like, okay, well, we know who that customer is, right? But like our more loyal customers, who are they? What do they want? Like, what should we be featuring more of in our dispensaries? What graphics speak to them? Like, what experience is going to make them feel better shopping at our site or our store versus somebody else's? How do we keep them coming back other than just price? So really, it's more that we're going to help the store. We're going to collaborate with them, use the data we're getting, tie it to the data they have that we don't have. I mean, you know, each of us has some data that the other doesn't have. So it's like, okay, well, let's get together, share that, and then create a much more robust picture of who are the customers that you have and who do you want more of.
Yeah, I love it. I love that there's so many data points because right now the layer of data that we see across the industry, I'm assuming very similar in the US. So I think like Pistol is big in the US, and obviously Hoodie Analytics is very large in the US. But in Canada, you're getting the point of sale data in some cases if they have the integrations, and then you get some wholesale data and some scrape data. And, they're cobbling this all together, but that's really just with what's selling. It's not what the consumer is wanting or what their preferences are based on what this is. So I look at this as it's just another even further or deeper layer of data that can help inform, because I couldn't imagine running retail and trying to curate a menu based on demographic and geographic and, what is actually working, or taking it a step further where now it's data that's accessible by a brand, a GTI, to go, hey, in this market, these products do very well. I love data. I'm a data nerd.
Yeah. No, and I mean, really, data is, I think, like one of just the primary conversations going on in the industry right now. And part of the struggle is like, there are all these different pieces of data that are being collected, but no kind of unified combination of all that data to make us all like that much smarter. So I think, I know it's in process from talking to people. There are a lot of people that are trying to kind of like solve the
they're chomping at the bit. They just, you mentioned data, they go crazy over it, but it's super exciting.
Is like our back end analytics, just, if you're a StrainBrain customer, you've got your login to your StrainBrain account back end. And we can give you that customer profile. So we can say, okay, let's look at the last 30 days, not only like the product mix, but we can say your customers are mostly shopping seeking this effect, right? Because they're doing effects-based shopping, which they're not doing at most other places. So we're like, and then we've created kind of these cute little like personas to sort of help you see. So we'll say, you have 40% what we're calling right now like partiers, people who are like, let's go, like they've slid that
all the lawyers
slider all the way. Yes. Right. So like you've got a like majority of your customers are like fitting into this profile of like the effect they want is, energized, they want high THC, etc. Over here, you've got like the real focused lawyers who like, they want the focused, like low THC focus, and so we'll give you that kind of visual picture of this is your mix. And what's great is any one retailer amongst their 3 locations in the Chicago area or 3 locations across 3 states, the mix is different in every store. Nobody has that same profile across stores. So it's like, great, let's get a little more nuanced in your marketing to talk, this store should be talking to these customers and have this product mix, whereas this store really has a different kind of customer that they're talking to and serving. So tailor that marketing accordingly. And we can help you get much more refined about how you look at your customer.
Love it. I love it. And I think even though our GDP for cannabis is much smaller than the state of California, even probably smaller than the state of Illinois, if I had to think about it. Actually, there was a report. Illinois is killing it in cannabis.
It is. I think the report last week, I want to say over $2 billion in sales. So
wow. Yeah, you guys consume a lot of cannabis. So many lawyers down there in the state of Illinois. Listen, I love StrainBrain. I think it's super important that everyone pay attention to what's going on here because this is a game changer. It really is. It's solving a very real problem, right? Which is just complete saturation of SKUs and information and trying to understand. I look forward to it. Wes, maybe we can do something creative where we visit one of these sites and get some sort of an overlay as Dina is speaking. We'll show what it looks like, what it's in its full glory. But Dina, thanks so much for joining Legacies and explaining what's been going on. Say hi to Noel for me. I'll send him a text. We're due for a catch up anyways, but good luck. I mean, this is exciting.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. Pleasure to talk to you as always. And thanks for the support, really.
Of course. Thanks so much. All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're joined by the team at Blunt Botanicals. We've got Jill Ozero, founder and CEO, and Sarah Jones, newly to the position of Chief Commercialization Officer. Ladies, thanks for joining Legacies.
Thanks for having us. Thank you for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. We love what you're doing. Before we get into what Blunt Botanicals is, what you're doing, all the great things there, we want to understand your background and history. Everyone has one. Jill, maybe we could start with you and what came to founding Blunt Botanicals and why you wanted to operate in this crazy legal market.
Oh, wow. So I guess going way back, I was a teacher and a yoga teacher. And I met a guy who was doing bee farming. And so that's how I first started topicals. I started making a lip balm for my son. And yeah, it was great. I loved it. People loved it. He kind of dragged me to farmers markets kicking and screaming to try and sell it to people. And during that process, one of my closest friends got cancer. And so we had for sure had cannabis in our life, but we'd never used it medicinally and we'd never used it topically. So this was in 2010. And she said, Jill, I really need you to figure out how to make something I can use on my body and I'm not going to feel high, but I'm going to have some relief, because she had 3 little kids. So I flew to Vancouver. I had no idea where to buy cannabis. I didn't even know about extracts or that they existed, knew what RSO was or anything like that. So through that process and lots of trial and error, I figured out how to make cannabis topicals and cannabis suppositories, and they helped her. So that's how I started doing it. And then I just thought, this is helping. I need to figure out how to get this to other patients and other people. So obviously pre-legalization. So I worked with a lot of compassion clubs in BC. And then I learned about what extracts are. And that changed things partly because my house smelled a lot better. My 14-year-old was like so scared to bring friends home, because he was like, my mom's making this weird potion in the kitchen. Adding
some elixir going on in the kitchen that I'm not sure about.
Yeah, so that was a weird year for him. Just like spoiler, he turned out great. It's fine.
Well, that's good. You didn't ruin one. Okay, great. But there's a bit of a gap there though, where you're like, so we went to Vancouver and we did this, and all of a sudden you're making suppositories and all the learning curve for all of that. I could just imagine. You said it in seconds. I'm sure it was months, if not years, potentially.
It was, and I had more kids during that time, and it was really funny. Looking back now, me, like 9 months pregnant, asking people if I could buy pounds of weed. So they're like, hey, and you're like,
oh my God,
there's a lot of weed for a pregnant lady. So it was a really interesting, and yeah, I'm kind of glossing over how much work it was, but
yeah.
And I did courses, I did certifications in cosmetic formulation and other more in-depth research with terpenes and cannabinoids to figure out how to do it during that time. Wasn't just cooking up vats of coconut oil in my kitchen. So fast forward, I remember reaching out to the Office of Controlled Substance and saying, this is what I'm doing. How can I do it legally? And they were like, you can't. So that was the goal. As anyone that's watching this podcast or listening to it that's gone from before times to now times, it was weird. It was hard. But we won and we persevered. I had multiple attempts at my own license. Thank goodness it didn't work out, because that was like terrible times for a lot of folks. And then COVID happened. That was a dark year. But we just kept going because we kept getting emails from people saying, this stuff that we've tried is amazing and we need more of it. So I partnered with a manufacturer in Edmonton named Token Naturals. And so they're the LP. And working with them has been great, because we've been able to go in and manufacture all of our own stuff there. And that's where Blunt was born. And we've been working there for 4 years now.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
I love how that kind of formed up, because in the early days, obviously Wes and I were working very closely with companies that were just coming on. They're just recently licensed. And in those days, it wasn't a matter of having an LP of record. Brands weren't formulating themselves or their own products under another LP. And the ability and the way that market opened really gave rise to what we see. I want to say oversaturation, because there are some that shouldn't be in the market necessarily, that are just kind of riding some coattails. Whereas in cases like Blunt, and we've heard nothing but amazing things with Token Naturals. We actually talked about them earlier. They're running the pilot program with Plant Life for METRC. But I mean, it's also scary, right? Because all of your business is dependent upon how well they function. Are they paying their excise taxes? Are they doing everything they need to do to continue to be above the line? And you don't necessarily know, right? As the brand, I mean, depending on your relationship, but we've seen a lot of horror stories as well in the industry where that relationship went sour or it didn't necessarily work out so well.
Yeah, luckily for us, Keenan and I were friends before we started our business relationship together. We met at a U of A program, and they put us together because we were the cannabis people. They didn't know what to do with us.
You would just stick these stoners together over here in the corner, yeah.
We gone in a couple weeks. Over there. But we're not. That was more than 8 years ago or something like that. Anyways,
right.
We knew each other. We have had a really close working relationship, and so it's been good, luckily.
Were there any challenges? So obviously you had legacy products that were successful. They were helping people, right? And I think that's the underlying theme here, is that they were truly helping people. Was it, chopping block, editing room situation where you have this lineup of a ton of products, but we as Token have the ability to help produce and process some of this, but not necessarily all of them? Or did all the products make their way into what is now Blunt Botanicals?
Oh gosh, no. So I make non-infused products as well and all that jazz. I've made everything from, lip balm and sugar scrubs to bath bombs and foot creams and eye creams and everything. Wow. We've made it all. And soap and just everything bubble bath. But I had my first kind of kick at the can in the legal market at a different LP out east. And we produced 3 products right early on in the early days of, we were the first topical with THC in Canada. So I was right at 2.0 legalization and made 3 products. And it was just so hard. Everything was so hard. So when we started working with Token, I just said, I only want to make the product that people keep asking me for. I just need to get this product out so the people that are asking for it have a place to get it. And so we started with one product, and we did one product for 3 years. And then through all of that, it was such a steep learning curve about what's the difference between rec and medical, and how do we talk to stores? At that time I was one woman. Yeah. So how do I go to all of the stores in Alberta and leave my kids in the car? I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
It was, that was why we did one product, and we figured out kind of how to exist in the cannabis world. And then
I couldn't imagine a one-woman show trying to do all of that. Because it's one thing to have a product or a winning product and then go through the process of, okay, you're going to attach yourselves with an LP of record. And then you've got product, you've got cases of products, but now I need to get distribution. And obviously province to province is much different in gaining distribution, but it's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of emails and follow-up, and then studying the data. If you've got access to the data, is it proving to do well in this market versus this market, right? That's crazy. I couldn't imagine.
Oh yeah,
Sarah,
our first sale.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Our first sale to AGLC, I can't remember. I think they bought 100 or 50 cases. 50 cases.
Wow.
And I was just so focused on that they bought 50 cases. I forgot that I needed to sell it to the stores. And so my friend called and she was like, "Well, what stores is it in?" And I was like, "Oh, right. But I have to figure out how to get the stores to order it."
So it's a web. It's definitely a gnarly web when you really look at it, especially from inception. The early years were vastly different than they are now, but that's where we actually met. So she was with an LP and she was my account. So
okay. I was wondering, how did you get involved with Blunt Botanicals and with Jill? But what is your background and how did that lead to where you now are?
Yes, I was with, what's so applicable now and what's come full circle for me now is I was with Aveda Canada for about a decade, working in a variety of positions and directing advanced academies to running their education programs. So teaching people plant science and how it's put into products, why it's meaningful. But it was amazing and meaningful work because it contributed to environmentalist efforts all over the world. So we worked intimately with people in Nepal and villages throughout the Amazon. We had intrinsic partnerships with people, indigenous peoples all throughout the world. It was a
Wow.
company that was birthed over almost 50 years ago, and it was a top beauty brand in the world for many years. So through all these mentorships that I received over all those years, it led me to understanding, obviously, manufacturing and vertical integration in a unique way. When I was with an LP and we had, I think, almost 70 SKUs that we were pumping into every single market across Canada. It was a small team, Keenan leading the team, and I was his director of sales. And so, yes, when I saw Jill sitting across the boardroom table waiting at me, no,
Help.
I'll give you anything, help me.
Yeah.
It just, obviously, we were working in every category, challenging categories, albeit, and through all of the legislation, we had a manufacturing facility to run, the logistics of everything. But Jill spoke my language. She actually was influenced by the founder of Aveda to commit to environmentalist efforts, sustainable sourcing, and reduced waste. So while we were helping other brands as well, she also was helping at the LP and directing other brands and helping them. We were learning a lot. We were able to apply our authentic power and our authentic mission to this specific brand. And that's where it really, one day, it just felt so good to say we could do more if we did it together and we hyper-focused. And then we launched 4 products in 1 year.
Wow. Well, I mean, you've got experience with 70, so what's 4, right?
Yeah, so we honestly, it did help because we had all of our systems in place. We'd worked through such challenging times. So, up many nights, sick kids, sick moms on the computer, making sure everything was flowing throughout the countries, frozen trucks in Ontario, missed flights. It was every single challenge you could possibly believe. And it really did lend to us being very effective and optimized for how we wanted to move forward.
Right. It's funny, as you're talking about the challenges, sometimes bottlenecks, I guess, but I think to the early days and those coming in, none of us knew, as we were joining. Like, I went through that entire process from MMAR to the ACMPR and to the Cannabis Act. And so I followed the regs, right? And I had opportunities where I could have started an LP, and I'm like, guys, I'm living pretty close to these regs. I don't think I want to. But there was a lot of rose-colored glasses that were handed out, right? Money and pump and dumps and all this stuff happening, not realizing the intricacies of the industry itself. Great, we can make product. Okay, now we need to package it. Let's package the product. Great, now we need distribution. Okay, how are we going to get distribution? We hire a sales agency? Do we build a team? Now we got to get into all the retail locations. Oh, wait, now we need to make sure the consumers actually buy them. None of it. This is all an afterthought. It is building this plane as it's taking off, and no one really understood. So to have that experience, I could see why it made so much sense for you to become involved. But now I want to shift into understanding Blunt Botanicals at the core, right? Because you've mentioned this a couple times, sustainability. Sustainability, throughout any industry, in some cases has become, it's a bit of greenwashing, and they're buzzwords. They're not necessarily at the core of who the company is, but not in the case of Blunt Botanicals. This is what you live and breathe daily through all your products, your conversations. My question is, though, because we've seen this, we've seen the mounds. I mean, we were just even talking about METRC and, so Plant Life and Token Naturals, they've got this pilot program, METRC. METRC took a ton of criticism, and I'm talking, this is the most simplistic of levels of sustainability or lack of sustainability. RFID tags that were required on all the plants. And we would see this, I spent I call it a sentence, working the US side with the technologies and the different operators, but we would see piles of just the tags. And these are just the tags to track cannabis. Then we fast forward to Grodan cubes, which I still have a massive issue with. I used them myself. I get it, but a lot of them are getting buried. Then you look at the plant waste. Sometimes it's incinerated, sometimes not. Okay, but at least that's biodegradable. Now we've got products. They need to go into something, which is the packaging. And if we've got dupe tubes, we've got, Oh my God. Let me just ask this question straight up. Is sustainability in cannabis even realistic? Like, is it possible?
Well, as the industry overall, like, we consume a lot of electricity as well.
Yeah.
Oh, electricity and water and yeah.
Like on every sort of avenue it's really depressing. Like when you talk about it like this, and when I think about it, and when I was preparing to come on this podcast, I was like, this is a really, really hard topic, because is it sustainable? Is anything sustainable? Yeah. No. Yeah. We've proven that with science.
Right.
And it is, so just to kind of back it up, when I originally, before I started this, I thought if I was a teacher, I could change the world by teaching kids about environmentalism.
Right.
Feminism. I was like, the only way to do this is to live off grid and like walk the walk.
Yeah.
Talk and then do it. And then make no money and be miserable.
Path 1 sucks. Path 2, what's the next one?
Yeah, so I was literally loading the wood stove one night at like 3 a.m. It was awful. It was an awful existence. It was really hard. And I was like, this is not working. The kids don't want to hear some older lady talking about how not to have fun. Yeah. and so, is it sustainable? No. But do I think we should give up on teaching new, better, different ways to try and be better, at least? Like, we can work on the electricity side. We can work on the water side for sure with recycling water and all those processes, and people that are doing that, I commend them. But with the packaging stuff, yeah, it's disgusting. All these tags, all the things you're talking about. But for us, I do feel like we're fish swimming upstream, but I don't think it's a waste of time. I'd rather swim upstream and to make an attempt to not add more garbage to the pile.
Right.
Like, it's a huge pile of garbage. Who are not going to be able to avoid garbage. But the options were like die because you're so depressed. This is so awesome.
This just became the most morbid podcast episode we've ever had. Loading wood-fired stoves and just screw it, die.
It was kind of, that's how the fork in the road. I think I'm trying to, no, I wasn't planning on saying any of that. But when you ask, is it sustainable? It is depressing. And it is like, no, what every industry and what everyone does is terrible. We're terrible.
The current status quo could not be called sustainable whatsoever. Knowing that every single piece of plastic so far in the industry still exists, isn't being recycled, and is sitting in the landfill is a harsh reality. But it's kind of one of those things of like, well, a lot of people won't look at that because it is ugly. I guess we don't mind, and we've lived our whole lives trying to look at it and be aware of it and change. So yeah, maybe the route isn't for us as individuals to live in the woods. I'm glad Jill tries so I don't. But the route of our authentic power is to make, she is a formulator. This is who she is at the core. I am a business person. This is who I am at my core, sales and marketing predominantly. So we're going to try to make a little spin here and see what we can do in this very difficult industry, because we love a challenge. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, obviously. And we're not doing it with 70 products anymore. We're trying to totally carve out the possibilities here. But what we even spoke about earlier was the fact that we have to have strategic growth because of the path we choose, because of the amount of work it takes in this industry to create change, such as in packaging. So such as having compostable packaging that's still affordable for the end consumer. All of things are the mycelial network that Jill has been working on for many, many years, and that I'm now adding in that modernization to.
Wow. Well, bonus points for dropping the word mycelial. But it is. But you just brought up a point that I hadn't really thought about. I've even questioned it myself, although I don't give a fuck at the end of the day, is the recycling, right? So you've got a doob tube, you've got, I mean, I've always got, there's so much, there's just so much kicking around. And I'll go to dispose of the package, and I'm like all my kids, 16 and up, so they know, they've been well educated in the world of cannabis. But there's always that question of, oh, if I put this in my recycling, because the recycling just goes to the curb, what will the neighbors think? Oh, what will the neighbors think if they see that, right? So I'm just wondering, like, I don't care. Again, I don't care. But I'm sure there are individuals that are choosing to take that tube that held, by the way, a single half-gram joint and throw it in the garbage rather than recycle it, because that emblazoned THC logo's on there. God forbid your neighbors know that you consumed cannabis, but it's okay to load it up with 6 empty wine bottles, right?
So true.
That's a point I'd never really thought about. And is that potentially affecting the recyclability? But then we got to go back even further, which is sustainable. So you mentioned this, which is affordability, right? We know that the vast majority of sustainable type packaging is more expensive in a lot of cases, which is why I give as much kudos as I can. Jonathan Cartfield, founder of Aveo, originally AVD, I mean, they were looking for a plastic to use in their vapes, and they, bioplastics and various, reclaim from the ocean reclaimed plastics. They're just far too expensive. And as we know in this industry, margins are razor thin on literally everything. So what did they do? They invented their own plastic. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, these guys, they're going a step beyond. So they use like hemp-derived plastics that will fully biodegrade with no microplastics in like 3.5 years. But this is seeing a problem and solving it. They were able to do that. But the vast majority of how many licenses now? I don't know, 1,200 across Canada, maybe, let's call it floating around 1,000, because you see a lot of revocations and cancellations and whatever. The vast majority aren't thinking this. They are just looking at, I need it as cheap as possible because my margins suck. We haven't created it. We know where it was created. I'll digress on that. But the question then becomes, does it make sense to be that individual in the room that is shouting, that is caring, because others will now pay attention and potentially follow and try to do what they can? Or is it a united effort or concerted effort to say, we need sustainable packaging solutions? And it's not just packaging, right? It's all of the Rockwell cubes and those tags and all those things that we were talking about, the ancillary supply companies. But at what point do you question sustainability and profitability?
Yeah.
And is there a rub there? I mean, that's got to be a very difficult decision.
Definitely. Probably why we started with some PCR products, right? We had to start somewhere. I think a lot of us...
Sorry, PCR for the audience and myself.
Post-consumer recycled. Post-consumer. So it's not new plastic, it's reused plastic, but it is plastic. And because of the restrictions in our specific industry, we can't adopt the innovations that are happening around us in all of these other industries where we're seeing amazing things happen in the world. We aren't able to adopt that as quickly in cannabis. A lot of it, to your point, is supply chain and driving down the unit cost for our consumers. So there's consideration of that. And that's where starting off as Jill's ethos was to perfect what she did, make sure that the quality was there, the demand was there. What that inevitably allowed us to do was help our supply chain. So we increased a ton of demand. We had wholesalers begging us to make more things. I mean, one wasn't enough when it was selling good. Excuse me. So inevitably, what has happened is we just created a demand. We've watched the data. We've proven that there's consumer demand for it as well, more and more. As each generation ages in, we're seeing it go from 40% consumer wanting it to over 60% of consumers wanting you to be sustainable as a brand. So that also influences a lot of change. But you are correct in saying that we are up against every single barrier, especially due to our industry, by attempting to do these things.
Well, and that's where I look at power in numbers, right? But it's just, it's that fulcrum or that tipping point where it's like, you feel like you just shout, like, please adopt it. Like, why are you not? But let me ask this question, because I'd like to understand where within the various categories we see the most waste. The one that bothers me, as I've probably already, you can tell by just my inflected voice, is tubes. Like, the pre-roll tubes drive me freaking nuts. But when it comes to communicating sustainability, and we can tackle this because I think it's a bigger subject. How do you influence the consumer in that case? Or because you're talking about, 40% versus 45 and 50 and climbing, great generationally. But for those right now, we are so restricted. I say we, I'm just proverbial we. I don't process anything anymore. I consume it. But how do we communicate with such strict marketing regulations? It's difficult enough just to drive a consumer to a website. You guys have a great one, by the way. It's also SEO optimized. Kudos on that, which I love. But let's face it, not all brands are taking the time to do that. It's a requirement. You need to have your 1-800 number or @contact phone number and a website. Checkbox Health Canada. We're good to go. But how are you communicating to consumers? Not even the point that sustainability matters. Just, hey, we're over here. We're sustainable. We're using sustainable packaging. Like, how do you do that?
I think, sorry, do you want to answer? You want me to?
That's difficult. It's certainly difficult to have somebody buy into a 2% category, right? We all know that the categories are going to grow and these 2.0s are going to grow in anticipation. But to have a team buy into what you're doing and resell it for you because you are not allowed to sell your own product that you believe in, that you've toiled over, that you worked so hard on our whole career. If only we could sell it ourselves beyond doing pop-ups, et cetera, and events, et cetera. How do we get them to buy into it? We literally tell our story as much as humanly possible. And we create a lot of access points for people to talk to us. So we utilize our non-infused brand as well to just talk to us as human beings, show up in all of these other places where our consumers are showing up, where our community is authentically showing up already. And it's just Amy, Jill, and Sarah, this is what they do. Oh, by the way, this is also what they do. And we've seen that conversion explode over the year. Of course, we've put strategies behind it, right? To capture those audiences, to speak to them in meaningful ways. We've seen our audience grow exponentially. It's completely exploded in every way possible. It might not just be followers on Instagram, right? It's our reach. Not everyone follows, but people watch you and they come back for more. And we've seen almost a 1% drop off in the year. So nobody's disengaging. People are wanting to consume, so we just continue to feed it. But we are using a lot of strategies to capture why audiences authentically showing up to make these decisions already, not in cannabis.
Yeah, I love that. That's very smart. Very smart. But I mean, there's other brands that, excuse me, they work as much as they can towards sustainability. They don't have that option, right? They don't have a non-cannabis. I've said this a million times, which is come up with a product equal to without the cannabis and market the hell out of that and direct them over to cannabis, right? I think nutraceuticals, right? Nutraceuticals, especially with the confines of the wellness category within this industry, form a joint venture with a nutraceuticals company and get some inserts and packages. Like, let's do something. But let me ask this question. Where do we see the most waste? I mean, again, I get very frustrated with doob tubes, but there is far more than that. Where are we seeing the most waste through the categories in cannabis?
Oh my gosh, I was honestly thinking about that too when I was thinking about comparables and what's the peak issue here. I think the legislation and the way that we even need to logistically distribute these products, the way that we need to case them, the way that we need to build pallets. We have to waste room on pallets with extra packaging to make it squared off. The amount of rules for every single wholesaler is completely different, and there's new ones popping up all the time, right? We made the manual. It was 60 pages just on how to ship to everybody. Someone said, you want us to read this? It's like, if you don't, it all comes back, I think that a lot of it, to me, in my opinion, is it is about distribution and the energy surrounding creating those materials and distributing those materials is awful. Also because of the way that they have had to restrict their inventory capacities at each of these wholesalers, where we used to be able to ship 10,000 units and let it sit for half of its life. We are no longer allowed to do that. And every 3 weeks we must top up. As a brand, we've seen when you have exponential growth, you are emptying that lot continuously and continuously reshipping only 3 weeks quantity that might just continue to sell out weekly.
Jeez.
So to me, when I see that, I just shake my head.
Where at the government level would it have to come down from that there has to be sustainability practices? And I'm not talking like ESG stuff. I'm talking like at the level of look around us, look at all the packaging, look at all the waste. I mean, you're talking at the most simplistic form that no one even thinks about, which is your pallet and the way that they're filled and the way they're squared off and how those get shipped and what the reorders and replenishments have to look like. Like these are, I remember when it launched, every province, this could be still the same, I'm not sure, they had their own case requirements. We want a 13 pack. What the hell are you even talking about? Right? But no, this province wants 13 in a box and this province wants 16 in a box. And now you as a LP or provider brand, you're sourcing from Uline or whoever, all these various carton sizes only because the province wants it different.
Yes, there's nobody talking to one another in order to streamline their systems. Their processes are all completely unique. And it is a challenge. I couldn't imagine a small operator without any experience thinking that they could launch a product successfully and sustainably grow it. You know,
we've seen it. They fail. And so I guess right. But sorry, back to my original where I was trying to go with the question is at what level of government, because it ain't Health Canada. Health Canada doesn't give a shit, right? Is it Minister of Environment? Like what department would this have to even come from? And then what kind of direct influence would they need? Because I'm still of the opinion, like Health Canada shouldn't be the ones regulating. It should be the Minister of Ag. Please. And then obviously there's the spinoff for your Cannabis 2.0 product, which then has certain health concerns. Sure, move that similar to tobacco, whatever, over to Health Canada. But would it be Minister of Environment? Like at what point is there a rub and they're going, okay, we need to change something?
Yeah, I think probably that would be where to start is the Minister of Environment taking a look, like a good hard solid look at what the root causes of all of the extra packaging in both shipping and the products. And then, but then it's going to get batted back to Health Canada, because if you think about the gummy or edible situation where, you know, people are buying out their max, putting it in the car, coming back in and buying out their max again, because they need 100 milligrams or more to be free.
And those people are rich, by the way.
Yeah, those people or, you know, you're buying your Phoenix Tears and making your own. You're still buying multiple things in a gross package. So, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know the answer. I don't know.
The reason that I ask is, you know, if we can lead a charge somewhere, it's like, where do you even start? Like, and I think that's part of the issue with our current state of this industry, which is we don't necessarily know where to go to influence change. We don't necessarily, where do you even start that spark? That slight ignition that will do, because we see, you know, the excise tax reform all the way from the Maritimes to the West Coast. And as much as I love everyone involved and want to be involved, it's just noise to the government. The government, they just don't, there's so much money being generated in taxes that I just don't think they care about us.
That's exactly how I feel, which is why I don't spend a lot of time worrying about that. I just want to show that we can make products and make money and stay in the industry, and people can put the garbage into the compost and compost. It's not even a bioplastic that needs special composting. Like, we just have to be able to do it, show that we're doing it, that it's a quality product, that we're still making money, and then it's interesting.
That still CR.
We can make all those things happen. But that's my personality. Like, if there's a roadblock, I'm not going to try knocking on that door. I'm just going to go either. Like,
I can just imagine I could imagine Jill's household. You got a bucket for everything. So this is for biodegradable. This one's for plastics. This one's for. Why did you put this in there? That's not, back to the wood stove for you.
The wood now. It is true. People say at our house, they're like, "Where's your actual garbage? You need to have just
we run zero waste in this household."
But
But it's true of the fact that I think I'm glad she keeps the blinders on, to be honest, because I just keep saying, this is exactly what we need. This is exactly where we should go. And she's like, I have a sugarcane zipper that is child resistant. And it is, we're on the meeting. She has a cauldron bubbling. And, oh, sorry, I have to stir the cauldron. And yes, Sarah, I have this for you. And if you can sell it, I can get this for you. It's beautiful. Because for me, I'm looking at those problems. Who do we talk to? We see little avenues of possible solutions, such as every single provincial government has made promises and commitments to meet some sort of environmental standards. They need to know that the majority of that could possibly be coming from this industry and get them there faster if they would give us some money to help with those changes. So the one little dream project we have floating while we're packaging bath bombs, zero-waste bath bombs, is to start some sort of not-for-profit that connects those two people. So, hey, government, you need 6% reduction. You can find that right here in Alberta with these LPs. If you give them the money for a consultant to flip it, you will reach your quota. So there are some dreams we have. Again, it's about the strong foundation. It's about us making something that lasts a long time, not doing this for nothing. But it is going to take some time. But that is my view on how we could possibly shine a light in their eyes as to say, the solution is right here.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, so, we've talked about some of the biggest problems, but what's next? I mean, we're kind of forward-looking statements as a press release, right? But what is the realistic nature of what can we expect moving forward in sustainability practices?
Yeah. Generally or from Blunt?
Well, both.
Yeah. Well, for Blunt, where our goal is to be out of all of our plastics that we are currently using. So we're switching, like, for example, anything that's in a post-consumer recycle plastic will move into a water-soluble plastic, not a bioplastic, but just literally something that the consumer can throw in their compost or drive to the ocean and throw it directly. Not work. And generally, I don't know what's next for sustainability. For overall arching sustainability, I think there's two schools of thought. There's the people that are kind of giving up, and then there's people that are charging ahead with initiatives like Sarah's talking about.
Yeah, and we see that reflected in the industry on the opposite coast. I am absolutely a fangirl of Aqualitas and seeing them lead the charge in their unique way for their unique environment. I think that's an amazing example of what people can do in their own communities with their own resources. We are doing the same with farmers and things in our regions. But I think that what the overall community can look at is we're seeing more packaging options coming up, ocean retrieve packaging, all these things. If more people listen that the consumer is actually wanting this and they do their own data research to prove that it's there, then maybe they will choose those items and the supply chain will open up. It'll drive down the cost for everybody and people can make positive change and kind of walk the walk. As we always say, we are all about plant purity. We could argue all day long about how people grow their flower, flush their flower, cure their flower, the purity, and where they come from, their ethos behind growing their flower, those legacy roots, right? And the craft roots. But we don't really think about that when we're manufacturing other products such as beverage, edibles, topicals. And that's where we're trying to push in and say, we're still the purists. This still exists, and there's avenues. Follow us, watch us, work with us, ask us. We might have something to contribute, but we'll just keep shining our beacon so that other people just see it and start to think about it and convert it.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Jill.
No, I was just going to say people have to have brands and products to look to that are motivating and inspiring. Like Patagonia obviously is one. Beta,
right.
There's multiple, right? Like we're conscious consumers and we hope, everyone.
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, even thinking Patagonia or, there's others, you don't necessarily know, right? Like when, if like, I don't have a ton of Patagonia, but I didn't know when I had that they were so into sustainability, that this was their ethos. it was more, that's a brand, it's good quality. I like it, right? But when you find that out, now you have more of a sworn loyalty to those brands because of their ethos, of what they believe in, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish. But again, it still brings me back to like question number 2, which is, how the hell do we communicate this, right? I mean, this obviously podcasts and websites and all this kind of stuff helps, but it's tough.
Even just, we're firm believers of just the nomenclature. So what are we going to name these super hyper specific unique products that, a zero waste bath bomb? What is that? How did we come up with that name? Is because the customer literally needs to read it on the menu. Oh, okay.
Right.
This is exactly what it is. We cannot be too creative. We certainly just have to groom the customer and groom the industry.
Right.
It's even when we talk about conscious consumers that go to shop for a winter coat, the majority are not going to pick Patagonia, and they're not going to know all the reasons why. But the people that shop for high quality, people that shop for maybe luxury, people that shop for things that are going to last and do what they say they're just going to do, those are the people we capture. And with the names, such as having a menu where they see, oh, they have a zero waste bath bomb. That's possible. That I wonder what that is.
Yeah.
That's just what starts it off.
What is a zero waste bath bomb, by the way?
Oh, well, I mean, Jill and all her genius of having compostable labels, like the entire outer packaging that we must have. You compose, and it has to be CR. It has to be CR. It has to have all the labels, but we made them compostable. And can you describe the outer pack a little more? Like
well, it's just it's just the brown crap paper that's compostable, and then the zipper is made of sugar, and you can throw it in your residential compost or your home compost. So
and these were available through a supplier, or did you was this a lot of homework? Who has this? Which came first? I could imagine, but was it we need this, or who the hell has this? Where did that come from?
I think this is a happy story, and it shows where sustainability in the industry is going. I went to MJ Biz in 2017 or 18, I can't remember, and my sole purpose of visiting that trade show was to find compostable packaging. And I went every packaging trade show that I could go to, specifically because I didn't want to make more products if I had to put them in plastic. I was that weird lady that was visiting.
I don't think it's weird. But
back then it was what?
Yeah. Oh, great. Crazy sustainable Susan's here. What are we going to do now? Lock the doors.
She comes. Sustainable Susan. Next t-shirt.
It sticks.
So back then, I couldn't find anything, which is why we didn't have anything.
That must have been so frustrating, though.
It was, and I found a cardboard manufacturer in California that made boxes that were compostable. I was obsessed with them, and then I got a quote, and they're like, "It's $7 a box." It was like,
yeah. Do you know where our margins sit?
But anyways, fast forward. Long story short, I found bags again at a packaging trade show that were residentially compostable. So that means they have a bioplastic film on the inside, which is still much better than a Mylar bag, in my opinion, since most municipalities do offer residential composting, etc. We did try them out in one of those, what are those machines called? The Lumo, anyway, countertop things, and they worked pretty good.
Oh, and on at home compost?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
and it was okay.
It was okay, but it wasn't as good as the Wild. Wild Gummies makes a compostable bag. Again, the only reason we didn't go with that was because of the cost. And then I found a new supplier who made the craft bags with a sugarcane CR thing again at a packaging trade show. And it was just such a magical moment. So that was when we decided we could scale this and make more of them. I mean, it's not perfect. We still have to ship them. They still get manufactured with Mix Energy, and they still get shipped. But at least post-consumer, we're not adding garbage to the heap. Yeah. And then the other piece is our bath bombs aren't a circle. They're kind of they're a flat rectangle. But this is water soluble. So instead of having a plastic wrap on it, that you have to open, and make some mess. It's weird. You just throw the whole thing in the bath and then it dissolves and there's no plastic.
How long does it take for the outer to dissolve?
Like, 10 seconds-ish.
Really?
Wow. We didn't even plan.
I had a bath the other night, and I was because I was wondering too. I'd had one for a little while, so it's like, oh, let's do an experiment with a little bit of an aged one. You know, someone puts it on the shelf for 3 months and then gets around to their bath. And yeah, within 10 seconds, but it just bursts. It essentially, you don't watch anything dissolve, but you just watch it froth like your typical bath bomb.
Yeah. I started with those years ago on the non-infused side of things. So we didn't have to have an outer package and all that.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people use them for their kids. I would make custom ones with cartoons on them and things. I have kids.
Okay.
People,
Woo. Don't say cartoons. Don't say.
Yeah, no, those were
Protect the children.
Yeah. These were not infused. They were not infused, everyone.
Yeah.
But I had one mom who was really upset. She was like, I don't know what's in this water soluble bag that you put the bath bomb in, and what if my kid drinks the bath water? And I don't know what I was thinking. I wish I would have had it on camera, but I put one of the bags in a cup of water, let it dissolve, and I drank it. And I was like, I'm not worried. Like, it's fine because the inks are sugar based and the paper is water soluble, etc.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't.
Are you seeing more? So you're talking about going to MJ BizCon and a lot of obviously advances and those practices come from the US. They tend to have more money, right? Depending on who they are, where they're operating. But are you seeing any of that development within Canada at this point when it comes to the packaging?
Actually, yeah. In Alberta, there's There's a few hemp-based ones that we're watching.
Okay.
They're not making anything that's applicable for us yet. And then there's Santa Packaging, which is they have some clamshells and some other things. They're mostly foodware, like things that you can use to package food.
Okay, yeah.
There's not a lot of CR. It's coming. I believe it's coming. And then there's lots of different substrates now that you can use in an injection molder. And so a huge barrier to entry for a lot of people is for us to recreate this exact package with an injection molder that's going to use our water soluble substrate. They need to make a mold that's about $150,000.
Oh, wow.
So there's people that are doing it, but you have to have the buying power to get the volume to justify creating the product without starting a package.
Sure.
Like the YouTube people, so inspired, but they obviously wanted. They can buy it with that tube chips.
Yeah. So how do consumers, and I want to say consumers in general, because it's weird because I have to look at this differently. You have this bubble within the industry, right? And there are individuals like yourselves and myself and, bud tenders and, all the way from executives to bud tenders and some influencers, et cetera. They live in this bubble of the cannabis industry. They know what's going on. Blunt Botanicals is doing sustainability and these guys have the highest THC over here and these guys have the best CBD flower. You get to know it. But consumers, like at large, they don't know, right? And I think we take this for granted a lot, right? I specifically do. I think we do it with any in-depth amount of knowledge in any subject is you just take it for granted. Sometimes, someone will say something, you look at them like, are you stupid? Like, what are you talking about? How do we support sustainability and ensure that communication, those messages, and outside of what Blunt is doing? You guys have a little bit of a different opportunity with your non-infused products. But as an industry, how do we influence or support sustainability outside of the context or the bubble of what we live in?
Conscious consumerism is, I think, at the heart of sustainability right now and making those educated decisions as to what you're going to consume, how long it's going to last you, and the ripple effect to what this will do in the future,
How are we doing it? I think we're doing events that are outside of the cannabis space. So they're not they're not a cannabis focused, not a cannabis centric event that has a large number of attendees. So then we're obviously there talking about wellness and cannabis and our other products, but we're kind of creating awareness in a different type of ripple in a different world. And people talk, they talk with each other. And they also, right now, I think more than ever, people are looking at things that are different and it's standing out more because we're kind of getting AI washed. And so when there's
Yeah.
when there's something new and it's a little bit different, people are kind of like, oh, what's going on over here? That's interesting.
Right.
And then I don't know, word travels. I did an event at a workout place in the town that I'm in. And I had a group of young girls come up, and they were, young. They were 35. No, they're like young to me. They were no, they were in their early 20s. And they came up and they were talking to me about all the things they knew about our products. And I said, where did you even hear about us? How did you know all this stuff? And she said, oh, people are doing TikToks about it. Like, we didn't do the TikTok. We didn't, I
Wow.
haven't even seen it yet.
I'm not on TikTok. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are we getting out of the bubble? I think we're just showing up in places where it is not cannabis centric.
Yeah.
And then word is getting around, the old TikTok. I only made one in my whole life.
Well, that's cool though. I mean, like the fact that it's moving to TikTok and people are making videos and clips or reels or whatever we call them. But yeah, it begs the question if retail locations or like, is there maybe not within the cannabis industry specifically, but sustainability trademarks or marks of impression that are on the packaging that could then transfer to, like, I'm just thinking all the various websites, right? And, obviously I love Ian Scott. I love Plant Life. I've got he sent me an Edmonton Oilers themed one over here. So I mean, much love. But I'm just thinking, like, you go on, I visit and frequent a ton of different retailer websites. Sometimes it's for research. Sometimes it's just I'm curious what their menu selections look like. And filters drive me insane. They really do. Because it's like, do you want CBD? Do you want THC? What's your potency? And that's about all I get other than category. And I'm like, could we drill a little bit deeper? Like, everyone's shouting, oh, THC doesn't matter. You're right. It doesn't matter. But until our filtering options change on these websites.
Yes.
But I'm just wondering, like, imagine a filter drop down sustainable products or sustainable company or something. Like, is that making any traction? Does it exist in this industry yet?
That was a deep sigh. Whoops.
I think there's still, I find for me anyway, just in operating the world, I still find people are looking at like say paper, for example. Oh, it's forest paper. I'm paying 30% more. I don't like sustainability in the marketplace equals expensive. I think that may still be causing a barrier to entry to put a sustainability type drop down, or pay more than you can to support the small business drop down. But
filtered by most expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. I ran these kind of experiments on our non-infused website. And honestly, some of the comments were frightening. So I don't know that the world's ready yet. I don't know that we're ready, but I do think we should play with it for sure.
As you were talking about how this industry has groomed the consumer to battle us constantly.
Yeah.
I think this contributes to it. So when we talk about, shouldn't the government, the wholesalers, and everybody be focused on this problem? Well, on the order sheets, they made changes. Now they show where it's from. So if you're in Alberta, you can see it's from Alberta, and perhaps you filter that way, and you choose from your backyard first. God willing, people are doing that to support their own economies in each region across Canada, right? But this would be another example of sustainable industry having a header, some sort of label on it for the stores to order from, and then again for the consumers to order from. And what I always go back to, and I've always kind of battled this, I think maybe from being at Aveda Canada, we did have a $200 shampoo. We did have service. We did have
it.
$80 haircut. There was, and you know what? It was the top brand in the entire world. It really spoke to the fact that intrinsically people do care if they know that there is a difference. And if they see that we don't make a product for one use, we only make products for 10 uses, that's why there's a cost. We see them lean into that because right down deep in their heart, they actually do believe it. And we see our brand explode in rural areas where we thought, conversely, metropolitan areas, maybe a little bit more on the niche of zero waste, less waste. Not so. These are people that are working in their areas in these natural ways to have a more natural life for themselves even. So we see all these different groups of people really do want something better. It is all about who's going to back it, who's going to back us up. And we do try to have these conversations, but we are sometimes told it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. And, you know, we get red in the face and we say, hell yes, it does. Look at this data. You know, that's my argument.
Yeah.
Like we do have to prove it. So it's kind of those things of who's breaking the barriers, who's putting in the work.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of people who are willing to do it, but we love our coal pile. We shovel it every day, and we absolutely love doing that work. It's just who we are. So we will hopefully lean in and say, what if you tried this in a store? And what if you actually put a menu up for that? What if you wanted to contribute to change? And it is great because a lot of the independents reach out and they're like, hell yeah, girls, let's do this. Let's try it out. So the more and more we're out there, the more a lot of independents are leaning into it as well.
That makes sense.
But dropping a great idea.
Well, I'm thinking through that because, you know, wellness as a category is very difficult. It's very difficult for retailers to, I'll say, dedicate a section because, you know, nothing drives me more insane than you're looking for. It could be even just, you know, a CBD vape or 4-to-1 or something like that. And they're right next to the high potency THC ones, right? And in some cases, you know, you've got various chains or indies that have carved out a wellness area. Just think of the future. I'll leave you with this to get you excited maybe, where all the work that you're doing, because we see this in other areas, right? You go into some sort of retail location. I don't know. I don't go into Sephora very often, but I think they have a natural section versus the rest of the store. So maybe we get over the hurdle of wellness and more companies start looking at sustainability and joining you in those ranks. And then maybe at the dispensary level, we start seeing natural or sustainable sections.
Yes.
And wellness. I mean, wow, it could be incredible. So I think the future is bright. It's just, there's so much complexity to, you know, sustainability worldwide outside of the cannabis industry is its own fight, right? It's its own fight right now. It's, you know, various companies. You mentioned Patagonia. They've been very successful in it, but there's others that, you know, we're talking EVs, right? And I'm sorry, not the most sustainable industry, no matter which way we slice it. We can greenwash that all we want, but it's not an easy subject regardless of industry, let alone the cannabis industry being 6-7 years young, but the future could be bright for it. And I think it would be. I mean, what lends itself better than cannabis and hippies and Grateful Dead and all of this recycling and, you know, what do we do with the biomass? It should be cannabis leading the charge in sustainability.
Yes.
To me.
Saying that. Absolutely.
It makes sense, doesn't it? And
like alcohol's not going to do it.
Oh my God.
They're too drunk. Sustainability. I could sustain 3 more drinks.
We all just need more CBG and to explore all these serial thoughts of sustainability and more. But, you know, we talk about, there's a lot going on in this industry that goes unsaid. And if we're going to make areas of the store that show how good it could be, we'll see just how much isn't that great too, because people did just flood the categories. They had a lot of capital, flooded in, meet the demand. And now, consumers are bouncing around. Everyone wants something new. Well, actually, I think everyone just wants the quality maybe that they were used to, craftsmanship that they were used to. So we'll see it grow when we see all these things kind of level out. But if we disappear, if we aren't here, could you imagine who's
going nowhere?
Work?
It's not going to go anywhere. And I think that's, you know, you have to have individuals like yourselves and Jill's mission that, you know, maybe more people should have lived in the woods and, you know, had a wood-fired stove to see what it's like. But I do like the fact that cannabis could potentially be that driver of sustainability. And even across other industries where they look and go, it's possible. They're doing it. Their margins are shit. If they can do it, then we can do it. Right? I mean, let's face it. The margins in cannabis are shit. Period. right? Unless you're the OCS, the margins aren't so bad. You know, various wholesalers do okay. Logistics companies do okay. But it's pretty sad that the actual brands, and I'll just say brands because, license holders, whatever, they're the ones that do the worst, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true.
It shows just how passionate we are. I mean, we have often said if we really don't want to work at Costco. Like, we really don't. We have so much.
Costco cannabis is coming.
Just shop over there. We're hockey. Anyways, I could go on, but this is what we're meant to do.
Yeah,
and it's
I love it.
People are just starting to bite on, allowing us to do even more. And we're like, we have so much coming, and she surprises me constantly with solutions. So I say, if anybody is out there looking for solutions, thinking that this might interest them, give our door a knock and we can see what we can do together. We're always here to help other people and collaborate. And we truly believe in this industry and the future of it. Where we are is not where we will be. So let's all just start focusing on where we could be, and we'll get there.
I love that. It's not where we are going to be. That's for sure. We're still young. But anyways, Jill, Sarah, it's been awesome chatting with you and having you on Legacies. We very much appreciate your efforts. Hopefully they echo through the industry, maybe even just a little bit more. Like one ripple at a time is all we need, right?
Great.
Anyways, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.